Good morning. So, how are you? I am back here for our daily conversation, and a lot of these conversations are coming from readers of You Are the Universe, Discovering Your Cosmic Self, and Why It Matters. But as I've said before, you can send me a question on any topic, and the place to send the questions is the following email address: info at jiyo.com, JIYO. Once again, the place to send questions is info at jiyo.com, info at jiyo.com. And while you're at it, you might as well download the app, which is Jiyo, JIYO, and that app is available on iTunes and on Android. And you can also go to the internet and become a member of Jiyo. The internet address is jiyo.com. We are building a community together that will help each other. We have experts in every area, from meditation to movement, yoga, breathing, personal relationships, emotional well-being, nutrition, and much more. So please join and help create a global community for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and happier world. Okay, so today's question is a very interesting question, because this kind of question comes up a lot these days, and it's based on a little misunderstanding. So the question is from Bindra Elias. Bindra Elias. And he says, Namaste, my beloved teacher. Thank you for the love you have for yourself and therefore all of us. I love you. I have always wondered, after the soul leaves a body and the soul makes another body for itself, how does all the spiritual growth that has been achieved in one lifetime develop into the new body experience? Also, Bindra asks, if I want to translate your live broadcast into Spanish, can I do it? The answer to the second question is yes, you can do the translation and help others if they so want to be helped and they want to participate in this conversation. Just make sure you attribute the original source and maybe even give a link to the original source, and that will be very good. I'll be very grateful for that. Okay, now let's answer your question, which is when the body dies and the soul leaves the body, makes another body for itself, how does the spiritual growth that has been achieved in one lifetime develop into the new body experience? Okay, so you've just stated that in a way that I need to address each of those words. By soul, when we say the word soul, what do we really mean? So what we mean is your core consciousness, that which gives you a personal identity. Your core consciousness or being or awareness that gives you your personal identity. And that personal identity has been created by you as a result of identifying yourself, your core being, with certain experiences, perceptual experiences, raw perceptual experiences, and the interpretation of those perceptual experiences gives you a core identity. And that core identity, therefore, is a confluence of meaning, purpose, relationships, context, and stories. Once again, that core identity, which identifies with the personal set of experiences, gives you meaning, purpose, context, relationships, and the stories that evolve from those experiences. Now, in Sanskrit, the word for those experiences is karma. Also, the interpretation of those experiences is also karma. So, both the experiences and how you interpreted them is called karma. Karma, therefore, is a result of the memory of past experiences and then also the interpretation of those experiences. And those experiences, which I already said, create meaning, context, relationship, and story, also lead to desires for the future. So what we call the soul is a confluence of not only meaning, purpose, story, context, relationship, but also we can say a confluence of karma, memory, and desire. So without experience, there's no memory, and without memory, there's no potential for desire. And without desire, there is no potential for manifestation. So desire is pure potentiality, seeking manifestation. And that's what core consciousness is always doing, seeking manifestation in the form of experience. The experience itself is in the form of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, sense perceptions, and then the constructs we create around those experiences and the stories we create around those experiences. When we understand this, then you'll see that your soul, being non-local and not in time, because it's formless, is always seeking expression of itself as form and phenomena. Every form is a phenomenon, and every phenomenon is the arising and subsiding, the arising and falling of experience in the form of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, context, meaning, story, memory, desire. And that's happening right now. I mean, the very fact that you're listening to this live podcast is that you have the desire for it, and the reason that you have the desire for it is because of karma, meaning, context, story, past, memory, etc. So every situation, every circumstance, every event is a manifestation as form and phenomena of core being. Core being or soul is not in time, but its experiences are in time. And they are part of a matrix of interconnected core beings that are part of a field of pure potentiality. So we can say there is a personal soul, maybe as a metaphor, a drop in the ocean, Then there's a collective soul, the current wave of manifestation in this epoch of cosmic time, and then that we would say the collective archetypal soul recycling itself as waves on the ocean, and then the ocean itself, the immeasurable potential of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. So personal soul, collective and archetypal soul, and then universal domain of pure potentiality, immeasurable potential of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. But your question I haven't answered when you say the soul leaves the body. And so I'm going to come back with a correction, but I'll give you a hint. The soul doesn't leave the body experience leaves the soul. Back in 15 minutes, this is my obligation, so I can do this podcast daily for you. So I'm back. Okay, so I'm trying to correct Bindra's statement. I said the soul does not leave the body experience leaves the soul. Why do I say that? Well, because the soul is not in time. The soul is formless. Therefore, it has no location in space. So there is nowhere for the soul to go. Nancy, I have to do at least one commercial, and it's my agreement with Facebook to do this. So don't mind. This is how all broadcasts on television, radio, everywhere happen, because somebody has to pay for the service. Okay, so don't get too sanctimonious about the commercial breaks, and I only know that I do only one in an entire broadcast. It makes it possible for me to bring this to you. Okay, so I was just answering Nancy because she was upset about the commercial, the break. Okay, so what I was saying is, since the soul is timeless and non-local and formless, it can't go anywhere. It is always there. It is timelessly now. Timelessly now. What we call the body experience, an intermittent stream of sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, thoughts, are constantly arising as the experience that we call mind, body, and world. They go together. The experience that we call mind, body, world go together because they are the arising and subsiding. They are the fluctuations, the excitations of consciousness as sense perceptions, the liking or disliking of them, which we call feelings, and then the interpretation of them that we call thoughts. So that is happening right now. Okay, the beginning of the program, that what you saw, that experience is over as mind, body, or experience of the world. So God has said, how do you know since you haven't died? Well, I die to the past every night through a practice called Yoga Nidra. So when I wake up in the morning, I see the world as if for the first time, with of course remnants of past experience, which is what we all do. We therefore are being born and we are dying as a body-mind world experience in an eternal now. Okay, so what happens upon death? The soul and its excitations come into incubation, come into what we call rest. So this happens also every night when you go to sleep. The fluctuations of consciousness that we call the waking state first become very fine, and we call that the dream state. So there are subtle vibrations that have no essential form. They're just the appearance, the arising and subsiding of images and sounds and thoughts. Thoughts have no form, right? An image that you hold in your consciousness as imagination, it has no tangible form. It has a form as an appearance. Okay, emotions have no form. So right there you should begin to recognize that if it appears as form, it appears as form, that's an evanescent experience as a result of the excitations of consciousness that are tangible. This is tangible, right? A thought is not tangible in that it is not a concrete solid form, but it has what we call an ephemeral, subtle form. Images are like that. But everything that we experience in the waking state as sense perception, sound, color, form, smell, taste, sensation, that has an equivalent in consciousness which is very subtle. For example, you can close your eyes and you can imagine the sound of your favorite song, or close your eyes and see a loved one, or close your eyes and imagine a beautiful sunset. So there is what we call gross physical form, and then there is subtle form and consciousness. And they are both modifications or excitations of consciousness. And that's what happens in the dream state. And then ultimately, the dream state, also the excitations that cause the dream state, the excitations that call the dream state, that we call the dream state, they also subside, and there is deep sleep. Of course, we now know that in deep sleep there's unconscious processing of information, there is harnessing of creativity, and a lot of activity which we're not aware of, but they're happening. They're happening in this deep state where there's no conscious experience. They're happening in this deep sleep state where there is no conscious experience. So, in the wisdom traditions that come from all over the world, whether in the Tibetan traditions, in the Vedic traditions, in many of the Eastern wisdom traditions, but also in the Western traditions, upon death, one may experience what are called bardos. Bardos are dreamlike states. And then ultimately, even those subside as excitations, and there is incubation in death, which is similar to deep sleep. And yet unconscious processing is going on. And what is being processed is basically karma, memory, desire, meaning, context, relationship, and stories and interpretation of experiences, and then the impulse for desire to take the unmanifest and bring about the manifest. So again, desire is pure potentiality, seeking manifestation. pure potentiality inherently is an unstable state because it's a pure equilibrium. And pure equilibrium of consciousness means consciousness is there, but it is not having an experience. And once it becomes aware of itself, then it sets off the process of excitation, fluctuation, and that which we call incarnation into experience. So the unmanifest is constantly becoming manifest. The noumenon is constantly becoming the phenomenon. The potential is always becoming the actual. The waves of possibility are always becoming space-time events. But space-time events are born and die eternally in now. And this is part of a matrix, an ecosystem of conscious entities or conscious agents that are also interacting with themselves and also with each other to create the ecosystem of the manifest. Ecosystem of the manifest. So, here is the key. The soul is not subject to birth and death, it's timeless. What is subject to birth and death is experience. The body, the world, and the mind are experiences that are the excitations of soul, and they are the soul is projecting itself, and I would prefer the word core being or core consciousness is projecting itself as energy, information, matter, space and time. And this is happening eternally now. Eternally now. You yourself right now are moving from manifest to unmanifest. Even right now, to watch this program, to have an experience, to have a perception, to have a thought, to have a feeling, to have an emotion, you have to go back to the unmanifest, where that thought right now exists as potentiality, where that feeling exists as potentiality, where that memory exists as potentiality, where that desire exists as potentiality. Because you are not in the body is in you. You are not in the mind is in you. You are not in the world is in you. And what we experience as a lifetime is a continuum of experiences. It's a qualia program. Qualia means qualities of consciousness. Just like this broadcast right now is a qualia program. It had a beginning, and it had a middle, it had a commercial break, and then soon it'll be over. And then we can resume it if we want tomorrow. So it's happening right now, right? The beginning of this program is dead. A second ago of this program is dead. And therefore, all experience being evanescent is transient and ungraspable. What is only formless and timeless is the real reality. The real reality. So that is why many wisdom traditions and ancient teachings tell us that if you can see it, if you can touch it, if you can taste it, if you can smell it, if you can visualize it, if you can imagine it, if you can hear it, if you can sense it, then it's not real. By real means it's false. It's an arising and subsiding, evanescent arising and subsiding of form and phenomena. What is real is the formless, which never dies, which is always arising and subsiding, and it is doing that eternally now. And also no being exists by itself. It's always as a result of relationship. So no separate self actually exists. You can only know yourself in the context of relationship and the other, but at the deepest level, the other is yourself. The other is yourself appearing as a different body-mind. So actually, Adam Ostrich says, define death. It's the termination of an experience, and birth is the restart of an experience. That's all. So the formless endlessly recycles itself as experience. Separate self doesn't exist because you can't. In fact, the separate self is the cause of all human suffering. The hallucination of the separate self is the cause of all suffering. In pure being, there is just the loving presence of all that is, manifesting as innumerable forms and phenomena, innumerable observers, innumerable modes of observation, and innumerable objects of knowing, all together. Knower, knowing, and known go together. Observer, observation, and observed go together. Lover, loving, and beloved go together. Then it's all basically one being manifesting as all these different beings. When we get closer to that experience, then we also know it as love. We know it as bliss. We know it as joy. We know it as equanimity. We know it as the peace that passes understanding. So, Bidra, I hope I have answered your question. Somebody said, do we all reincarnate? Replace the word we with the word experience. Experience recycles, and that is the incarnation of consciousness. When we say we, it implies a person, but as I've said before, there's no such thing as a person. A person is a constantly recycling process in an eternal now, in being. In being. Samsara, Elvira, is this cycle of birth and death eternally in cosmic time. So I know this seems a little challenging to some of you. I can see that from the comments. So, the beauty of all this is you can create any story, and for the time being, that story will be real for you. Till ultimately, you might decide to deconstruct all stories and rest in reality. Take care.